want them to stop doing that.
I have a
Whatever.
feeling it's not going to.
Yeah, no, this is what it is. We're all under construction, and this is the reminder.
This is the season we are in. Exactly.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Two Bi Guys. They're all special. I'm so excited for this one. My friend Clark is here. Clark Nesselrodt is a coach, a spiritual guide, a facilitator, end-of-life caregiver, and father of two. Rooted in a lifelong spiritual path shaped by years of executive leadership and deeply enriched by his work with indigenous teachers and wisdom lineages, he holds space for individuals and groups to experience healing, clarity, expression, and transformation. Our birthright as human beings. If you have no idea what that means, we're going to tell you a little bit more. I have been so happy to connect with Clark in my life over the past year, and we have so much in common that we'll talk about. And there's construction right outside my door that we have tried to avoid and can't get rid of. So that's the backdrop of this: is we're all under construction. We're all working on ourselves. It's a time of change and healing and new balconies. And that sound is the reminder that we're all a work in progress. So welcome finally to Two Bi Guys, Clark Nesselrodt. Hi.
Thank you. The two bi guys are here, and the construction is underway to allow us to step out and have a whole new view on those balconies. So it's just perfect.
Exactly. I know. I'm so excited to finally get back out there and experience that
Yeah,
view anew. And I needs to go away for some time, and I can't go outside for me to appreciate it anew.
totally. Totally.
So we have so much to talk about. Let's start where kind of we usually start
Hmm.
on this podcast: Two Bi Guys, by one bi guy, which is actually like, we've talked about it a little, but we haven't really dived into this, you and me. Like, I
Hmm.
know a lot about your past, but I don't actually know, like, how do you identify is a question I ask people. Oh my God, Jesus. Like, I know the history, but how do you see yourself in this community? How do you identify? And then let's talk about how you got there.
Well, I'm hoping you can help me figure it out. 'Cause
Okay.
I knew you were going to ask this, and I honestly don't know. And it is an area around which I have had a lot of static and dissonance. So there's kind of a core conflict for me because, well, I'll set up some facts first, but I'll come back to the core conflict.
Okay.
I grew up very much wanting a girlfriend. Um, yeah, wanting a girlfriend really bad. And then but you know, there was an awkwardness. It never quite worked. And then freshman year of college, I actually got cast in a play, first semester of college. And in the play, there is a love triangle between a woman and her two male best friends. And I was cast as the very straight, very traditional husband that she was like running around with these two guys on. And they wanted her desperately. And one night when she kind of shines them on, they end up kind of falling into this homoerotic romp. And so, you know, it's Noel Coward in the 1930s, I think. It's, you know, it's introducing this notion of bisexuality in a time that was really kind of pivotal. And what struck me was, as I was standing in the wings playing this very staunch, uptight, like representation of the traditional way, I found myself getting very jealous of those two guys and really I wanted the authority
Interesting.
of the play and that fantasy to give me permission to play that role of being queer. And one thing that has defined me as a person throughout my life is I ain't waste no time. Like, once I figure something out, it is like boom, 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 figure it out. And I went from sort of not even being aware of any kind of, well, there was an awareness, like, you know, guys caught my eye, but it was always really easy to rationalize. I had a whole story of like, I don't want to be with them, I want to be them.
To be them.
Um,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
because I was pudgy, I was awkward. Like, you know, there's all these super athletic hot guys in high school with the girlfriends. friends, like I wanted to be like that. So I thought
Uh-huh.
that's where
Uh-huh.
this urge came from. And there's still something to that for sure. That where my sexuality has merged with my own desires in my quest for identity has always been a very sticky space, as I think we'll get into when we talk about my book.
Yes.
So
I'm
I
excited to
went
talk about the book.
me too. So I went into my freshman year with all of this brewing. And from the moment I sort of had that revelation in the theater, then it became this like all out dogged pursuit for some kind of gay experience. And it took me like 6 weeks to find a guy to make out with me, and, a handful of kind of awkward makeout sessions and sexual experiences that all broke out like in fall, like October, November of my freshman year. By March, I had met the guy that I spent the next 7 years with. Like, I just went straight into this very long term relationship, and the train left the station, and we moved from rural Virginia to Chelsea in New York City. I was literally living right around the corner from the Rawhide Bar. Like, there were rainbow flags everywhere. I sort of was thrust at 20 years old into this hypersexualized queer experience of life. And there was a little bit of stickiness coming out for like a minute, just that initial like, how do I tell people? But I didn't grow up in a place or time where I felt like I had to hide this. Like, it wasn't hard for me. It was emotionally
Hmm.
challenging for a
Hmm.
minute, but it just kind of happened. My point is,
Wow.
I never had any reason to question it. I didn't have any internalized homophobia I was aware of. Like, this was just a memo I hadn't yet gotten. So
Huh.
once we were out and doing it, it was like, fantastic. Who gives a shit? Let's roll. And I then went through the process of that relationship was definitely not meant for the long haul. A lot of, going through all this in Chelsea, you get to have some pretty wild experiences, and that could be its own book unto itself. But what's relevant to this conversation is what happened when I was about 27 years old, I think. I was in Fire Island Pines, one of the gay epicenters of our planet, out proud with a new boyfriend, fighting off the urge to move in with him way too soon. And to make a very long, beautiful story very short for this conversation, a woman came walking into our share house kitchen. Something wild fell over me. I was in the midst of an incredible spiritual awakening in my life. My intuition was popping. I wouldn't say I was hearing voices, but I was getting very clear guidance of where to go and what to do next. And though I didn't technically hear a voice, it feels very accurate to say I heard a voice say, "You are going to marry her, have children, and save both of your lives in the process." And as quickly as I had decided I was gay in college, that quickly I now felt totally straight. Like, the thought of being with men
Huh.
was no longer interesting to me. My boyfriend was literally on his way to the island to meet me. And this is a guy that 5 minutes earlier I was like madly crazy, over the top falling in love with. And now it was like his presence was revolting to me. I just wanted to be with her. And it was a
Interesting.
fascinating thing because my entire life was built around my queerness. I lived in Chelsea, my clothes, the way I spoke, everything about my life was somehow related to being queer. And now all of a sudden, none of that resonates anymore. And it's like
Huh.
we talk about in some of the transformational work we do together. When you begin vibrating at a higher frequency, very quickly, all the lower frequency things that have been resonating with you, they fall away very quickly because those two, those, they don't, there's not harmony, there's dissonance. And so things move quickly. And, unfortunately, a lot of my gay friends sort of turned their back on me. They wanted nothing to do with it. I left Chelsea. I moved to Boston. I bought some Dockers and became straight.
Wow. Okay. Fascinating. Oh, I have so many questions to ask you, but
Yeah,
like,
I'll pause for a second and let you get in here.
okay.
Construction and all.
And the construction is like really giving me some work to do to, to
I
like be
know.
present and stay focused. It's good. It's good work. It's challenging, but I have some. Okay, I want to get into the frequency of it, and the guidance. Okay, but first to go back, the Noel Coward play, cluing you in like that. That makes so much sense because I only saw this in myself in art and often in like a Broadway play. Like I
Mhm.
remember Raul Esparza and Company and the little hints,
Yes.
the hints of non-straightness in that show. And what you said about it giving permission, like, oh, if it's real there, maybe it can be real in life here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so, and I have more things to get into, but did you identify as queer at that time, or did you think of yourself as a gay man?
I think I rode the wave for a few, like, maybe a year of like, "Oh, I'm bi," because 'cause isn't that just sort of how we all transition through? I mean, I'm joking, but, that's a very common thing as you're stepping into your comfort with all of these things. And I couldn't deny the fact and can't deny the fact that I had been really into girls and wanted to have those experiences. So and
Hmm.
this goes to the heart of the conflict I still feel. Um how can I be either of these things when they're always shifting and changing in my life? And I'll get to the heart of the conflict just to not bury the lead. Um, my biggest takeaway of this entire wild experience that I'm still processing and living is the labels. I don't want to speak to map this onto anybody else, so I'll speak for myself, but I really do feel there's a broadness and a universality wanting to come through for this. The labels have only served to limit me when what is actually happening is an infinite expansion back toward oneness. And whether it is I'm a white guy or I'm a bi guy or I'm a guy or I'm a dad or these things that we think we are not bad. They're vital to who we are. But when we label ourselves as such and say I'm this, not that, we are creating separation. And one of the things that defines me in this life is everything happening here that we see, feel, touch, experience, it is all a reflection of a deeper metaphysics that is happening. At the end of the day, it's all sound and light waves running this universe. And whether you bought coffee this morning or tea is just a reflection of those sound and light waves. And any place in physics of if that kind of physics where there is separation, those waves can't travel. And when they can't travel, they can't expand. And when they can't expand, they can't resonate the most deeply. And we are on a mission on this earth to expand those waves and find more harmonics and frequency. So I've been here to say from day one, I don't want to label myself because I'm here to weed out these separatist things that limit me.
Yeah, all of that resonates so much. It's exactly the kinds of thinking, the way of thinking that I've like been moving towards. But I here's what I'll say about the labels and like I think you're clear of like the no label and the labels box you in. And I agree for the most part, except at the early stages, I think for me and many others, the label can be a bridge to that
100%.
oneness. And so and in even though bisexuality is a word, I just talked about this with my last guest. Like he wrote a book called Fluid. And
Hmm.
his whole thing is like everything is moving and changing and the frequencies are fluid all the time and that's just kind of a fact of life and he uses that word even that word is a label that's going to
Hmm.
eventually
Hmm.
do something to box you
Yes.
in, but the goal of all of these labels is like connect you to the oneness and truth of it just is what it is and it can be anything and it's infinite.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah.
One of the most pernicious aspects of our nature as humans is our tendency to need to label things right, wrong, good, or bad, when in
Mm,
fact, everything is just a progression and an evolution and a crescendo. And I know for a fact I could not have arrived in this place of liberation in being unlabeled had I not first known what I was. And so this is not a conversation about
right,
whether we
right.
should or shouldn't have labels. This is an awareness of when those labels are no longer serving you.
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly. Well put.
and
Well put.
and this takes us to the next hot button thing, which is to jump ahead in the conversation to the transformational work that we get to do together. It really all comes, and again, I'll speak for myself, but I think there's a universality here. at the end of the day, we are here to rein in our egos and refine our
Hmm.
relationships with them. And
Hmm.
I know firsthand that for many years, the I am this, I am that, I have discovered myself as this, it is all part of this presentation to the world. It is all part of our clamoring to matter and to get other people to buy in to this presentation of ourselves that we are creating. And I see a lot of people using a lot of energy and putting a lot of force in these days into, you need to pay attention to me because I am here and I am this and that matters. And I
Hmm.
am
Hmm.
lacking if you don't reflect that validation for me. And
Yeah.
even that has served a purpose. And yes, part of that is part of this very vital fight to claim the rights that all deserve to have. And yet, there comes a point where you have, I think the greatest evolution comes from being able to say, I identify as these things, and these things mean to me, and it's important to me that you don't limit me because of these things. And wouldn't it be nice if you also liked this? And I don't give a shit. And I'm even willing to acknowledge this thing that I feel so strongly I am today. I am limiting my becoming if I don't acknowledge the potential that it might change. And this is kind of my bottom line to
Hmm.
kind of blow up the airwaves kind of a thing. This notion of this is how I was born, and I could never have chosen this, and you have to. It has not been my experience. And the notion that I have been cast into this life with any kind of condition, or you have to be this way, that I don't have the power to grow, change, and evolve, that's true oppression to me. And it's an oppression that we put onto ourselves, because if I have a vision of what I am cutting off the frequency that would allow me to become something beyond my wildest imagination. And that is the person I want to become.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm so glad you're here because you have this amazing way, and I think this is why I'm drawn to the work we're doing together, like of really crystallizing things that I know and feel in a way that just like makes so much sense when you hear it. I often cry when Clark shares at the end of a meditation because it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was feeling. And you've I'm not crying right now, but you've done it
There's
again.
usually 3 other people in the room, like, going, "Wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up."
Yeah, and I'm like in tears, like keep going, keep going. But what you just said is like the last the last 10 years of my life. Like I remember being about to turn 30, finally addressing these attractions I had towards men and thinking, I don't want to turn 30 without like figuring this out and what it means for me. And the beginning of my 30s was about me and finding
Mm,
myself and identifying myself and finding this word by that helped me feel like I'm normal and not alone and other people
mhm.
have felt this. And that was like so important for me. But from that point till now, and I just turned 40, like it's almost been this reverse process of moving away. Like once I understood myself and I'm comfortable with that, now it's like moving away from that specific thing, bisexuality and what is it, into bigger things. And when I was approaching 40 for a while, I was like, I wonder what my next thing will be. Like for the whole year of 39, I was like, what's going to happen? I'm going to turn 40. I'm pretty sure it's like this work we've done that you've brought me into and the expansion of my consciousness and the ego dropping away. And like I still get the importance of identifying yourself and connecting with community, and it's great and it's a necessary step to get to the next level. But the past year of my life has really been about letting go of that ego and
Yes.
connecting with the bigger energy that just is what it is. And I don't know, can't even label it.
Absolutely, and the beauty is, and I'm reporting from, like, the front lines of my own life right now, we have our egos, which are desperate to hold on to these things that limit us. Our egos don't want us to figure this out. Our egos are very happy with us and our limitations and our worthlessness and our lack of abundance and our scarcity. When we are those things, we need the ego. That gives the ego value. The ego is thrilled. The ego is constantly shredding at you to not figure it out. But what's so beautiful is when you gain that trust. I truly feel that trust is one of the superpowers that we have all come to planet Earth to cultivate. When you cultivate that trust to surrender and begin letting these things go, you actually don't lose anything, because all of the things that are vital parts of your frequency, if there's a symphony currently playing the crescendo of you right now, and you begin to take away those barriers that would prevent that sound from flowing, the harmonics are all there. So there are several, and I can give you a specific story if it would be helpful. There are some things that I've always really wanted to accomplish in my life, dreams that I've always really, on a deeply intuitive level, been like, this needs to happen. And make some progress, always making progress. Every 10 years, the cycle would bring this topic back around, try it again, but it would always not get out of the gate. Something would always stop it. And as I've done the deeper ego refinement around it and finally let go of my need to play this role, you take a step back. Now it's actually happening, but it's happening because it is in service to that vibration serving, not to my ego. Because when I finally have done this, it will matter and people will notice me. With that part now being gone, the shit's actually popping off better than you ever could have imagined.
Yes, exactly. And I want to get to the details of it, but I've noticed a very similar thing for me too. And the work I've been doing in the media entertainment industry for the last 5 years has often come up against a wall. And I've always looked at it as like, I want to be successful and do this and that. And, there was ego to it. And a lot of that has fallen away recently. And what comes up out of that has been really magical and special, and like, the right frequency to where I am now. And like, the comedy I'm doing is so much fun and fulfilling. Like, I'm finding these things that, I couldn't have found when I was trying so hard to be a
Yes.
certain way and have accomplished certain things. Also, what you said really resonates this week, especially because we recently this weekend did a meditation where the insights that came through for me this time were to release everything, release these old stories.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't specifically tell me release like identity, but it said release everything,
Mm-hmm.
release all the stories, the thoughts, the overthinking. And it's not that those things go away. I think it's that they're there now always, and I can let go of the story of it
Mm-hmm.
and just trust that
Yes.
everything that has led up to this moment is in there. I don't have to remember it all or try hard to make it happen. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to let go and release it and just let the new growth happen, and not try so hard. Like a plant,
Mm-hmm.
the plants aren't trying to grow. They're just let the leaves fall and then they grow again.
Most of the really good stuff that's happening in this universe is happening way out there beyond this cosmos. And the magic, as I've discerned it, and everything I'm about to say is like my little story of how I hold on to this knowledge. The beauty of all of this is you get to create your own story. There's no universal theology. There's no one guy that figured this all out and we have to all follow him. There's just some truths that we begin to, how am I going to describe this to myself so I don't forget? Because we're here living lives in bodies that are designed to forget. And the trick is to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to remember. And so, one of my stories of how I hold on to these truths is we're just here creating sound and light vibration and frequency to send out into the universe. So, if I've wanted my entire life to be a Broadway star and I finally make it onto that stage, what's actually happening in my human experience and what's actually happening in the theater, that is all just like this nucleus of energy that is sending a sound wave, a light vibration out into the far reaches of the cosmos. And all of that joy, all of that accomplishment, all of that artistic expression, it's doing something out there that is really changing the planet, that is really changing the cosmos, the world writ large, all the way up to the divine itself. When we're down here going, but I want to win a Tony, that vibration's not flying as freely as it should. We are affecting that
Mm,
vibration. We are muddying that vibration. So we
mm,
have to get better at going, oh, I'm not even doing any of this for my own experience. I'm doing it for all of that out there. And the joy I get to feel is my reward. And it's a catch 22, as is everything in the universe, because winning the Tony could bring you a whole lot of joy. There are also a whole lot of people that have won the Tony and had the worst nights of their lives afterwards, because you
mm.
finally get it and realize, oh, fuck, that wasn't it. I still feel like shit inside. And so it's this refinement process of recognizing you can get on the stage, you can win the Tony. And I don't even know how to verbalize this, because until you're in that place of transformation where you're starting to get this, it's almost impossible to describe to someone. It's that subtle shift in doing those things, not because you need to tell your Facebook friends and finally they'll see I was worth something, but because it's what you're here for. And now you're living
Yeah,
your
yeah.
purpose and you're doing what you're supposed to do. And that is the greatest source of joy. And I'm in a phase right now after the meditation we did Sunday where I had a really specific pivotal thing shift. I laid down like an ego holding that I've had a hard time with. And this is what's so magical about this process. I woke up with the insight that, like, I made a choice, and I'll tell you the story. And I made the choice that represented this huge ego shift for me. The energy that came into my body the rest of the day was so intense I had to pull my car over. I was vibrating at such a high level. There was so much high frequency light and sound flowing through me. I felt like I had done heroin. I've not done heroin before, but it's what I imagine. And it's like, holy, this was like a lifelong blockage that you finally have that constipated poop. And it's like, get ready, because when that energy flows, there's no stopping it. And like, even my TikTok video I posted since then, it's content I recorded months ago. But in this new, it was the first one that went over this many views. And I'm just seeing all over my life things that were a little bit muted, a little bit diminished. It's like I almost can't handle the brightness of the light that's now flowing through. And now that becomes its own practice to hold that and ground it.
Wow, beautiful. I want to ask more later about like what that feels like and how people can notice that even
Mm-hmm.
without the meditations. We'll get there. But yeah, it makes like what you described about the letting go of the ego and doing the thing because it's what you're meant to do and where you're supposed to be, and it brings you joy. and you and you put that
It's
joy into
you,
the universe
you're
over the construction.
Your voice sounds so good and so clear. It's honestly not that distracting. So I
Okay.
would just go and try to
Okay.
ignore it.
Okay. Is that a metaphor or an actual advice about the
Take it for
construction?
what you will.
I like it as both. Okay. I can feel the vibration of the construction
Yeah.
in my body. But yeah, that's exactly the shift that I have felt over the last year is like I'm doing similar things, but I'm doing it with a different energy and with a different intention and goal, and it just
Yeah.
feels so good. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode with Clark Nesselrodt. There's a lot more coming up with Clark, and there's a whole nother episode next week. Part 2 will air soon. You may have noticed I've been on a little mini hiatus within this season of Two Bad Guys. I've been very busy and slowed down a little here, but I've now got a few episodes in the pipeline, so I'm hoping to put out the second half of this season a bit more quickly and in time for Pride Month. On that note, one of the things I've been busy with is developing my coaching practice, and something I really want to do as part of this practice is to develop by community. We talk about it here on this podcast so much, why community is important. So there's lots of ways I'm thinking about doing this. Stay tuned in the future for more things. But for now, one thing I want to do is a check-in, sharing, discussion circle during Pride Month for bi, fluid, queer questioning people. on specific topics each session. Everyone will have a chance to drop in, check in, share what is going on for you on the topic of the week. I'll talk about some of my thoughts on the topic, and then we'll have a little group discussion, 1 hour only. I'm going to do it every week beginning May 27th and then through June, through Pride Month. For the exact dates and the topics, check my link tree. I'll put it in the link tree for both Two Bi Guys on social media and Robert Brooks Cohen. All the info and the dates will be there. You can sign up if you're interested. These are totally free, no cost to join, 1 hour, different days of the week, some weeknights, some weekends, so that I know different people have different schedules. I want to make sure people can come to at least one. So yeah, stay tuned for more, but that's for now. DM me with any questions, and now here's more with Clark Nesselrodt. I want to get to your book, and I want to get to like the feelings of these vibrations, but you said a few things I just want to comment on and ask you about. First of all, the noticing hot guys before like you're aware of it, and this idea of wanting to be them in addition to like later realizing wanting to be with them resonates completely. I remember seeing like, like underwear model ads and just thinking like, I want to be that. I want to be hot like that. But actually it's a little of both. I was attracted to them and want to be it. And like, cool guys in high school. Same thing. And it's so funny you lived in Chelsea. We were probably in New York at the same. What years were you in Chelsea?
This was 04 to 2012.
Yeah, so I was there.
I wasn't in Chelsea that whole time, but those were my New York years.
Interesting. I was in New York 07 through a while, but I guess I wasn't out, so we never would have crossed paths in the queer space or had wild random connections in Chelsea. But it's interesting we were overlapping there. Okay, you said in Fire Island you met a woman who would become your wife, and you had this spiritual awakening. You got clear guidance. Something wild fell over you. Like, how do you notice that? Like, what was that actually like? What makes you say that something came over you?
Those things, I think that one of the things that we have to learn about ourselves the most, if we are going to be having any kind of pseudo spiritual tapped into a greater source and power. And there's lots of people that just choose not to do that. And, one of the fundamental rule of this life we're living is free will. I'm in deep belief of a magical world of higher powers and spirits that are here guiding us and influencing us and affecting us. And they cannot and will not do so if they don't have consent. So you have to not just be aware of these things, but to invite them into your life. So if you are someone like me that has invited that into your life, which to me has never been a choice, I arrived on this planet with a clear knowing that the divine was, and my only purpose was to get back to it and learn how to commune with it more purely. So if you're willing and able to do that thing, knowing there's something greater and seeking to refine your ability to commune with it and understand it, you come to recognize that just as Superman has this power and Batman has that power, we all have different gifts of how we tap into that. And so some people literally hear things. Some people have these deep physical knowings in their bodies. I'm a Gnostic. I just know. There are times where knowledge lands in my psyche with such a clear thud. It's like something that might have taken years of cogitating on or thinking about or doing a logic game with. It's just there, like an instant download. And throughout my youth, I didn't really... I question it more now because you have to learn how to discern that voice from the voice of the ego, the arrival of that knowledge from an idea that your ego gives you in service of something lower vibrational. So all I can tell you is, in a season of my life where a very specific way of information downloading into my being led to things that only served me when acted upon, this information came in that same way. looked at through less of a spiritual lens, I just had a good idea. But one might ask, why would a guy that was happy as a clam in his gay relationship with a fabulous apartment in one of the most gay neighborhoods, and like my whole life was built around this, why would my good idea be to now be with a woman and blow all of that up? It was coming from a place beyond logic. And when it landed and I felt into it, I felt the zeal, I felt the peace, I felt the exhilaration and the excitement and all the things that was like, why would I not now do this? And oh, by the way, it isn't even a choice. The thought of going back to my boyfriend is now impossible.
Fascinating, makes a lot of sense, and also is so hard to do, to just like listen to those voices and actually believe and trust that it's real. I think I think, like many overthinkers and people pleasers, and probably a lot of other queer people are in that category, like I spent a lot of years doubting and resisting some of those things that would come to me, and not even
Mm-hmm.
realizing that they were insights coming to me, just thinking that they're the same as the doubt thoughts and the worry
Yeah.
thoughts, and just they're all in this mix, and I would just circle around all of them and not be able to differentiate. And I think a lot of the work we've done, and even just like quiet meditation work, like just actually sitting and meditating alone and getting quiet, that has really been helpful to sort out those different voices and the
Yes.
different guidance, and like uh getting quiet, it's so easy. but but yeah, I and not to just like go around in circles and back and forth, and the doubts and the worries obscure it. Oh my God, it never stops.
Well, it's not just, I'll give you a break because I want to jump in on this. It's not just the doubt and worry. And this is where our conversation really comes full circle. It would have been very easy for me, if not the more common human reaction, to have had the experience I had standing in that beach house kitchen that day, and to have had my next thought be, this is crazy, I'm gay, and to
Right,
have
right.
turned my back and walked away from a situation that has given me the rest of my life. And I have met not a few gay men along the way in the almost now 15 years since this all began to unfold in my life that have heard my story, gotten a little misty eyed, and said something to the effect of, you know, it happened to me once too, and I always wondered what happened to her, because they couldn't
Mm.
entertain it. I'm a unique being because for some reason, and thank the Lord, because it's one of my favorite parts of myself, the notion of completely blowing up my entire life within the next 6 months didn't even phase me. Like, that seemed like I didn't even think about it. Like, I didn't have any choice but to be in service of this higher vibration that was now flowing through. And, this is why the ego is so pernicious, because you form these very clear opinions of what does and doesn't work for you and who you are and are not. You know, I once had a wildly transformational season of my life crack open because I chose to walk my dog the opposite direction around the block. We get locked
Huh.
into these repeating cycles of like, oh, I like my coffee with this much cream. I turn left when I leave the
Uh-huh.
door.
Uh-huh.
And this is what makes us automatons. And the universe craves diversity. The universe craves change. And something as simple as when you send that vibration out of yourself going, I'm going to turn right today, it sends a signal that goes, he's open, send something new. And that's where all the magic comes from.
Fascinating. I love that. And it's like about this idea of just openness and, you know, like surrendering to what might come and not
Mm-hmm.
resisting. And I think you touched on something like the gay label, does limit a lot of people. I've been seeing that more and more lately as fluidity becomes more known, even among the gay community. I think in the past, there was probably a lot of that kind of thinking of like, well, I'm gay, so I'm not going to go down that road. That doesn't make any sense. And yet what possibilities are you cutting off? So
Mm-hmm.
before we get into the book, like, you know, I want you to finish the story. Like, you said that you got the insight to marry this woman, have children, and save both of your lives. Did that happen? And also what happened after
It
to get to
absolutely,
now?
It absolutely happened, without getting too personal. It saved my life because if I were still back in Chelsea living the life that I was living then, I don't think I would have made it. Like that just was never going to give me all that this new life has now offered me. With regard to my partner, there's no doubt that there was a struggle and a pain there that I knew instantly upon meeting her that I was going to have an ability to help transform. And she's a magical, beautiful, divine being that is only more powerful and radiant every single day that I see her. Triggers the shit out of me. I mean, this is the hardest relationship of my life. I mean, we take each other to the depths of our deepest trigger on a constant basis. Our ability to now recognize that, come back, come to awareness, come to peace, and come to resolution, usually within a half hour, now represents some of the great work of my life and hers. And that is the kind of people we have become, having walked this very fascinating, um, Oscar worthy path that we have walked together.
Cool. Yeah, I sometimes feel like in my relationships, like you revisit the same things over and over, like somebody triggering you in a certain way doesn't necessarily go away, but it's that spiral metaphor.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
you're, as things come around, it's not just the same thing repeating itself. You're a little at a
Yes.
higher frequency each time if you're paying attention and if you're doing this work, and you can manage it a little more with more clarity and more intention, and you can get to the point where you can resolve something in a half hour that might have once set you into a week of turmoil.
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, and to continue to and just to give you the facts of what happened, but also to link it to this larger conversation we're having, I think one of the great blights on our culture right now, and this is shifting quickly, but holding on to this '50s mentality that we are, and this is I want to be careful how I language this because we all have a unique karma and dharma. We based on all the things that we carry with us coming into these lives, there's a certain amount of experience that we are kind of assigned to have. And though we have free will and can kind of put ourselves in a situation that might cause this lessons to come through this lens or that lens or to have this shape or this color, that's all the magic of what unfolds where that dharma and karma meets our free will. But there are certain experiences that we cannot run from. Like we came here to have them, they are going to happen. And the relationships that come into our lives, they're the great catalysts of all of this. And this notion that while some have a dharma karma that would have them come meet one person, fall in love, be monogamous, end together for the next 75 years, that's great. That is exactly what is meant for some people. And they've created a beautiful example for some to follow that are meant to also then come and do it. It is also totally right, good, and proper that a woman is meant to come into your life, put two children on the planet, shake your shit up, and then all of you move on, having reframed that relationship into something totally new that doesn't look like marriage. And so it is not a failure in any way, shape, or form that our marriage ended in a cataclysmic divorce that nearly killed me. And the fact that having gone through that with her, I now consider her one of my dearest friends. The fact that we are the Bruce and Demi in this co-parenting dynamic that we now live, that's been the great gift. And so to hold that as some kind of failure to me is just a preposterous concept.
Beautiful. That was actually exactly what I was thinking right before you said it. Is like so many people in these situations and people I've worked with, like, they're scared of things changing, or
Hmm.
they might look at that as a mistake or a failure. And it's, most of the time what's happened, I mean, all of the time, what's happening is meant to happen. And these big changes are not necessarily bad. Like we often judge these things and try to follow the path of what others are doing or what we should do, and that may limit what you're meant to be here for, and some really big powerful thing that, like, or experience in your life that has to happen. And it's all happening for a reason if you kind of listen to that voice inside you and trust it.
It can sound a little cliche, but the bottom line is, and I truly believe this, nothing is ever happening to us. It is only ever happening for us. The
Mm,
greatest, most painful tragedies of our lives, there is a form and a function to them. They are happening for a reason. And as I have come to find for myself, the only real choice is, if you're going to stay in that place of resistance of this should not happen, why did it happen? You can stay stuck in that place as long as you want to. The minute you get to the place of this may hurt, this may take me years to grieve, I may not actually ever get over this, and whatever it does to me, if I choose to embrace that, I can get to the positive aspect of this sooner. If I just
yeah,
say, this is what so, this is what has been assigned for me. I will rise from these ashes and I will discover that purpose. And
yeah,
you don't have to look far to find many examples, infinite examples in our world of how that has played out for countless people.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, exactly. Do you want to share briefly anything about your current relationship? Up to
Oh, I
you.
do, absolutely, and yeah, I want to complete that whole arc.
Yeah,
Although there's a lot of story to get from the marriage to this relationship, because I did, and this should be its own episode. Um, but
you'll be back, I think.
yeah, part of the challenge I faced, and I think a lot of us faces, and I have to really be very delicate with how I language this. There are aspects of gay culture that are just some of the most beautiful things happening on this planet. There's no elements of the queer pop culture that I just love, and there's also a lot of darkness and like really not great things that we're holding on to. And some of the experiences I had had living in Chelsea really soured me. And so I left my marriage in a place of, well, I'm sure not going to be gay again. And kind of holding on to this notion of, I don't want to go back to that place. And so I was very resistant to being with men again. But to be honest, being with a woman never really resonated again. Although I did have one more female relationship, which is a whole different story. But after working through years of a lot of resistance, and also an acceleration of my spiritual path that found me living in celibacy for several years. It was clear that I was being pulled back to men, and yeah, I found a guy. We met online. I wasn't even looking. I had a profile out there looking for men, women, trans, everything under the rainbow. And in a season when I wasn't really even looking, I just was glancing through some suggested matches and I saw this guy, and I honestly knew instantly. And this is the thing, when you get your place into
Wow.
being an awareness of these vibrations, when something resonates, you know it. And it's actually, my partner is how I met Rob. They're former colleagues, and he's just the most magical being. And our love is deep. And we've both done the work to be at this place of purification where we've got the goods. We know we're learning how to navigate it and hold it well. We are engaged. We're deeply involved in each other's life's work. He is an active father figure to my children living in our home, and it has certainly been one of the great gifts of this life.
Indeed, beautiful, and congrats on your engagement. I'm so
Thank
happy for
you.
you both. And yeah, I mean, it's so funny how we met through your partner because we had met through the industry and we kind of reconnected about a year ago because I had this script and I was like hoping he would help me do something with it. And then we
Hmm.
met for coffee and we sat down and he said, "Oh yeah, I left my industry job and I'm
Yeah.
like kind of putting that behind me." And I was like, "Oh no." Like I was hoping
Yeah.
he would help me and once that fell away and that expectation and that goal like then all of this magical stuff happened in out of that lunch, out of that coffee. He told me about you and he told me about the work you were doing, and that has become the I don't want to say the most, it's everything, it's been everything, and it's shifted everything about my life and my work. And so it almost is the perfect encapsulation of like I had to let go of these
Yes.
expectations and they had to actually be ripped from me in order to get the real insights and healing and path forward.
Disappointment is one of the greatest indicators that you have just popped something incredible open.
let's get into your book, which I just read a little bit of and was fascinated by. And I've heard a little bit about what it's about, but only kind of recently. You've only just started talking about it a little bit. So, is this the first time you're going to sort of share it more publicly? I think
Yeah,
so. So,
this
tell
kind
us
of
about
represents
that.
my this definitely represents a coming out for me.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
it's
and it's
related to the sexuality journey, but also, different. So, tell us.
It is, and it's so interesting how I imagine if someone is watching this and is just meeting me for the first time through this podcast, like, boy, that guy's confident. It's so interesting where that confidence, you're looking at the most powerful spot in your life when you're looking at that spot where all of that confidence goes away. And I've had a
Mm.
thing, an aspect of myself that has been in the bedrock of my life experience for as long as I can remember, probably before I was even 3 years old. It has the thing around which I have carried the most shame, the thing that has caused the most disturbance and upheaval in my life. And the work that we're describing made clear to me a few years ago, or not even that long, that like it's that thing in your life that is why you're here. And this notion that we so often take those things and pack it away as this secret because, oh my God, if people find out, they're going to drive me out of the village or burn me at the stakes. This is what actually has us the most locked up as a society, in my humble opinion.
Yes,
Um,
the things that scare you the most and that bring you all that shame, I have thought for a while, like that is your superpower. That is not only something to eventually not keep in the shadows, but it's actually like a powerful thing that you must use and share. And yeah. Okay, go on.
so, how do I get into this? Uh, as long as I can remember, I have had what began as a childhood, in my childhood, as a fascination and then evolved into a fetish in puberty, a complete inability to look away from disabled men. When I was a kid and I would see someone rolling by in a wheelchair or crutching by with an injury or an amputation, it took me over in ways that I cannot describe. Even as a 3-year-old child, just like following them down the hallway at the mall, like, why am I following this person? As a child, I would pretend play to be injured or handicapped. And at the dawn of the internet, and I write about this in my book, the day I first got access to a search engine, I discovered I was not the only one, that it's actually a known thing. And I've never been able to quantify how many of us there are, but just on in light of the many experiences I've had living very deeply with this, I think there's, if not tens of thousands, like somewhere in the ballpark of 10,000 people like us floating around the world. But I'm really guessing that, and who knows? I have built a great relationship with the NYU. Um, I'm sorry, NYU or Columbia, I can't remember, a psychiatrist, Dr. Michael First, that is kind of like the thought leader on what he has termed body integrity identity disorder. He's interviewed in my book, and even he, having been part of seminal research on this and having helped hundreds of people through this, he doesn't even have a firm grasp on how many of us there are. But it went deeper for me. I mean, my connection and my yearning and my longing toward the disabled was so deep, as was my own inadequacy and my own not feeling as though I had something about myself to show the world, to get me attention. I felt so special, but I didn't feel anyone else saw me as special. And it was almost the sense that if I had a disability, then that would give me that specialness. I would be worth looking at. I would be worth paying attention to. And it turned into a full-blown body identity disorder where in my darkest years of my 20s, when I didn't have enough meaning and substance in my life, I would have paid someone to sever my spine or cut my leg off. I was that deeply desirous of becoming disabled and to have that experience myself.
Fascinating. Like that, the part of it, I mean, I was reading your book and it's like the way that it manifests when you were a kid is really fascinating. That, and it's one of those things you're talking about of just like you didn't have to like guess it, or you just knew it was there. You could sense it when you saw someone. You described this moment of like putting on a friend's crutches, and the power and the energy and the feeling that it gave you. It's interesting how you describe it, about like you wanted to be special or like worthy of attention because of
Hmm.
that. Like, is that how it felt as a kid, or like how do you, did that shift? How do you see what it is now, and where do you get your sense of worth and specialness now? Like, did it shift at all?
That's a really complex question. I think as a child, this all existed beyond thought. You know, kids aren't thinking, why am I going to go build a fort? They just want to go build a fort, so they do it. And so I was just always drawn to these people. And when I got the chance to play and there were ace bandages in the room, I wasn't going to go play with the trucks. I was going to go play with those. It was just, and this is the beauty of childhood. Who we truly are has permission to freely express itself. It's not until we get older that we start going, oh, what are other people going to think about this? And what does this mean about me? And we begin to get into our head about these things.
Actually, yeah, that one of the sort of really resonant moments in the chapter, the sample chapter I read, is like when you wanted to get braces because you saw these other kids having braces, but your teeth were good enough, you didn't need them. And but you, it seemed like your parents could kind of tell that you wanted them, and at one point your mom just says, fine, like let's just go get them if you want them. And instead of saying okay, the shame took over, and you said, why would I want that? You
Yeah.
denied it and pushed it away at the moment, like it was right there. Tell us about that moment.
It's all shame. It's knowing that you are carrying secrets, and shame are the lowest vibrational forms in the universe. So in this world of sound, light, vibration that we've established, that's the lowest one. So if you've got this beautiful symphony going on and there's shame involved, you're like, all of your first chairs are out of tune. Like, it is not good. It's going to pull your whole life down with it. And so the shame was so deeply embedded. I knew something was up. I knew that I didn't need these things. I knew that I wasn't actually in need of them. And so I had enough awareness to know. And I think the shame came, this was not a rational thought process, but I think somewhere deeply inside in my psyche, um, it was the disingenuousness. It was the double life. It was the, you are not this way, but you are pretending to be, that creates the dissonance of untruth. And then that goes into the, well, why am I like this? What is wrong with me? And oh my God, if someone were to find out, then they would think these things about me. Oh my God, my ego is no longer protected. This illusion of how I want to appear in the world, that veil has now been shredded. This takes us to that place of denial, which is, you're actually now offering me the thing that I want the most, but I can't say yes to it, because to say yes to it would be to admit that I am this thing.
Right. It's the actual admission, acceptance of it that kind of feels like it makes it real, but actually the resistance is causing all this stuff for people, whether it's this or bisexuality or whatever it is. The
Mm-hmm.
resistance is amplifying that lower frequency energy, and the surrender to it is how you find that path forward. So, what then happened in puberty, if you want to share, and like how did this become integrated with your sexuality, and like how did it play out in that
Sure,
way?
sure. Well, in the 8th grade, there was a careers project, and before I flung my hand in the air, I already had a plot emerged. I was going to claim orthopedic surgeon as my career, though I had no interest in becoming one, because it would give me license to like investigate this and like go
Mm.
touch the wheelchairs and do all the things. And it was the dawn of the internet, and my sister let me use her computer to come do my first round of internet research, and I had the room to myself, and I began searching first very benign things to help with the report, and then like men in wheelchairs. And it didn't take long to discover the subculture of devotees, wannabes, and pretenders. Devotees are people that have this attraction to the disabled. Wannabes are those that wish to become disabled themselves and have that craving. And pretenders are those that actually go out into the world masquerading as the disabled. And I checked all three boxes and have actively pursued all three throughout my teens and adult life. I mean, honestly, up until 2 years ago. The irony was when I met my partner, I was actually in a season of resurgence of this in my life because it has come to a crescendo and it has fallen. I wouldn't ever say fallen away, but I've tucked it away successfully, sometimes for years at a time. During my marriage, if there were provocations where we'd see a disabled person out in the world and it would put me into a panic response. But like, I was happily married. I didn't even think I was gay anymore. I had no interest in acting upon this. And then it would come back around. It's that spiral you spoke about. So I happened to be in a season right when I met my partner where this was like picking up again. I had actually, there was a guy online that I had been coveting for years and wanting to meet him and have an experience with. And he responded to my messages after years of going unanswered, like within a week of my partner meeting me. And, you know, the universe sets you up in these moments. I mean, you can't make this shit up because it is the magic of life unfolding. And I had to make that choice. And I actually did go into having an experience with him, but it was not the experience I was expecting. It was a decidedly non-sexual experience for me. And this is not to give away too much, but I think it's worth sharing. These kinks, these bizarre things that become obsessive for us, as I think I quote in my book synopsis, we often think these things are getting our attention so that we can get off. And that is the misinformation served up by a hypersexualized society. That is the misinformation served up by brains that have been conditioned by a hypersexualized society. These sensations that take us over, that make us think we are being called to get off, they're very real, very powerful sensations that are the product of the sexual creative energy that makes up our life force, that makes up our greatest creative ability in this world. The work we do together has given me the discernment to refine my feeling into those feelings and go, oh, I thought for so many years those sensations were calling me to get off. It's actually calling me to something totally different. And I have a deeply intuitive, empathetic ability as a healer to deeply support disabled bodies. And I have helped probably 20, 30 disabled men have some very powerful experiences of healing, giving healing touch, various things in this modality that I work with them. And that's what was wanting to come through. But when I spent my teens and my 20s and my 30s compulsively acting upon these sexual compulsions and going so far as to want to become disabled, I was too afraid and what's the right word? I was too overwrought by those overwhelming feelings to be able to get into that deeper, more subtle discernment. And it really was. I credit my marriage because my marriage sort of pulled me out of the cycle of hypersexuality that living in Chelsea made available to me. And though I was in a beautiful monogamous sexual relationship, honing that channel into monogamy based on love calmed the sexual frequencies in my life where I could begin to feel into that. And that's when it turned into non-sexual healing service. And then again, I went through 3 years of practical celibacy after my divorce, where I basically lived like a monk and was just doing deep meditation practice. And that's when I got this next sort of big push toward, as fun as the sexual part is and as exhilarating as that is, like so many of these things, it was really fun until you come. And then it's like, oh shit, what have I done again? And what has that done to my energy? And oh, by the way, the reason I'm kind of stagnating in life is all of this creative force that is available to me to go change the world. I'm just shooting out every time I have the compulsion to go act on this urge.
Interesting, fascinating, and instructive to me. It makes me wonder where my fetish is going, because like I have one that I haven't yet talked about on this podcast, but like I will. I'm writing about it. It'll happen when it happens, and like I'm coming to new understandings of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that I've quite got to that point yet of like what's the other purpose of this thing in my life other than
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fun. I mean, it's fun, it's joyful, other than like, but it's getting off also, like it's arousing.
Yeah.
And I wonder, that's so interesting that it led you to this other healing stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you told me about this for you, like I had heard of it because we did an SVU episode about it. I think it's called Strange Beauty, and very,
Yeah.
very, very fucked up version of this playing out. It was like an
I'd expect
amputee
nothing
fetish
less for
episode. Yeah.
SVU.
A dentist, I think a dentist was amputating people who didn't want to be
Uh-huh.
amputated or something.
Oh, okay.
So that was my only experience with it. And so this is like a very different story. But it is something like, I think there's so many people who think that these things are totally unique to them, but there's other, it was interesting that you connected with other people and found people studying this, and that kind of helped you process it and normalize it. I'm curious, like in like right now where you are, I mean, it helped you connect to the work you're doing now. Does it show up still for you? I mean, I know you're writing about it also, and
Mm-hmm.
like I'm curious your goal with the book, but like how does it show up for you currently, and what do you do when it shows up?
It's an evolving thing. I think this will be showing up for me until the day I die. There are, and I'll give you a deeply personal example of about how this plays out for me. And I'm preparing for a talk that I'm giving tonight on worry, fear, and doubt. And one of the principles that I hope to bring through in that conversation is the first thought that arises in our mind on a topic, it's not ours. You can't blame yourself for it. Like our brains are so complex. We're so conditioned by past experiences. It's like when we have intrusive thoughts in particular, the first rising of that thought, just consider it static in the brain. Like it's nothing we did wrong. It's choosing to hold on to the thought and keep thinking about it and then do something with it. That's where we have to learn greater discernment. And so living with the brain that went through the childhood that led me to have this sense of inadequacy and unworth and needing to feel special, living with the brain in my head that has logged thousands of hours sitting at my computer, obsessing over images and videos of disabled men, living through the brain that has had probably 30, 40 sexual encounters with disabled men in the flesh, living in the brain that has gotten in a wheelchair and rolled through towns and cities pretending to be disabled. As much as I've healed, as much as I would know better than to act upon these things and reignite that forest fire in my life, those intrusive thoughts still come up from time to time. I'm very pleased it's more and more rare. And I have to say, spending a year writing a memoir on it's really helpful because you sort of expose yourself to it in that open way. The thoughts arise in less pernicious, less surprising ways. It's on the table. It's right here. I'm working with it. But there are these moments where my reaction to a common stimulus is very different because of the brain I'm living with. And so, I think this is a very common thing to go through, but there will be a moment where I'll think, what would happen if if I was the only one in my family not to get killed in a car accident? Like, what if I looked up and I was the only one left? And I know that what I would actually do would not be this, but my brain will go, maybe you'd buy a wheelchair, move to Tucson and pretend and just live out the rest of your days as a paraplegic. Like that would be comforting. That would be soothing. I would have turned this tragedy into getting to achieve something that I've always wanted in some way, whether or not how much fucked up that is. So it appears in those ways. One of the harder aspects that if I could flip a switch and just turn this off, I would, but we all have our crosses to bear because I spent so long on the hunt for disabled people out there. You're usually, it's not hard to find somebody in a harness. It's not hard to find somebody into S&M. It is not easy when you're in the phase of this where you need to act upon it. And just like we talked about the label serving until they don't, I could not have gotten to this place if I had not had my fun with this fetish. And when you're having these yearnings, when you feel that you're not going to get that validation of getting off the way you want to unless you find someone to do this with, not being able to find it has led to the most torturous moments of my life. And so because I spent so long, I call it in my book my disabled dude radar system. If I hear a click of a crutch in a shopping mall 200 yards away, I know. Like, I have this hyper attentive awareness. And, we were at Disney World with my kids. It almost makes me feel emotional. We're sitting at the Beast Castle having dinner at Be Our Guest at Disney World a few weeks ago on spring break and having the time of our lives. Like, the last thing I want to be thinking about is this, and a family with both a mom and a dad in a wheelchair come rolling in with their family. Now, the thing is, that's a spectacle for everybody. Like, part of what has taught me is, like, whether it goes to the level of a fetish like mine has, a lot of people are fascinated by disability and want to watch and just curious, like, how does that, oh my God, they're the mother and the father, how did they get pregnant? What, there is such a natural curiosity. And not to take us down a very deep path, because the bottom line of my book is there is a spirituality behind disability. There is a function that handicap plays metaphysically that is vital and potent and important. And so when we feel that draw toward them, we think we're looking at a wheelchair. We're looking at something very different that our souls want to honor and revere and be a part of, because they're doing something very important for our entire cosmos by coming and living these lives. And so, but to get back to your question, now that I've totally intrigued you by that,
Yeah, I want to
it's
know
really
more.
good. It's annoying. I don't want to have to be actively working to calm my nervous system sitting at dinner with my family at Disney World because this triggering stimulus has rolled into the room. And, we all have highs and lows. We all have good days and bad days. There's days where it happens and it's like a blip on the radar, like, oh, just let them roll by. There's days where it happens where it puts me back into a place of like, well, now what am I going to do? And it's like, I'm not going to do anything. And there's even challenge in that. And it's, one of the great gifts of this life is to have a partner with whom I'm able to be fully open about this. Like, I've really not had to hold anything back in sharing with him. And he has only ever received me in acceptance and love. And it has unlocked my ability to write this book, which I know is a huge part of my life's purpose. So I'm in such deep gratitude. So while I know there is no judgment there, the wheelchair rolls in and my trigger is now amplified by the fact that he knows I'm triggered. So I feel exposed in that way. And, as confident as we are in our relationship, I know there is a part of him that wonders, what if this were to flare up for him again? What if 15 years from now he decides he won't be okay unless he has some sexual experience or becomes disabled? And the uncomfortable truth, the surrender of trusting these lives is, I don't know that won't happen. I trust that it won't. I've done the work to line these things up in such a way. I am committed to doing the work in life that keeps my frequency high, everything from health and nutrition to my spiritual practice. Like, I have learned and truly understand, not from a place of rejecting these urges, but from transmuting them, that it would not be in my best interest or anyone's else's to act upon these urges. So just like a drug addict ultimately doesn't stop wanting to use drugs, they actively make a choice. I am not going to do that anymore, as an act of willpower. I have to live in that way. And so I am in full trust that living in that way, I'm always going to keep myself back from that edge. But I think I'll be navigating that edge for the rest of my life.
Interesting. I have a question and you kind of answered it there. It's about like finding that balance and that edge. But I guess everything you said makes sense. And also, in my head, I'm trying to square it with this idea of like resistance versus surrender. And
Mhm.
like, so it sounds like to me, you kind of had to go through the period where you were like actively exploring this and meeting up with disabled men, and like that had to happen to get to this awareness and understanding you have now. But what I don't quite get, and I want to hear your words on this, is like, how is it not that you're resisting it now to some degree? Or are you like, are you surrendering to it? How do you see that?
If I if at the age of 3 I develop a compulsion for burning myself or cutting myself, which is a common thing. I mean, the cutting more common than burning. If for whatever, let's face the facts. Needing to be sexual with a disabled person and wanting to sever your spine, it ain't normal. It ain't like an obvious it's why
Mhm.
you could call it insane. So let's make a comparable parallel to ease the conversation. If I wake up in a life where I'm convinced it is a good idea to take my hand and put it on a burning stovetop, that is that a fair equivalent?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I spent 30 years of my life acting
Wanting
on
to do that.
and
Mhm.
allowing myself from a place of non-suppression to burn my hand on a stovetop. And
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
scarred as fuck. And I have finally gone, oh, I had some fun doing this, but the fun always led to pain. The fun always led to destruction. Once I actually burned my kitchen down, maybe as an adult with willpower, because this all comes down to willpower. You know, if one of the vital things we're here to do in life is to develop trust, the next thing is to develop willpower. This notion that anything that we feel we need to do, we have to do, that's where we're truly powerless and helpless as people. We are here
Mm.
to cultivate the ability to say, this is not good for me, so I will choose not to. So I don't see it as an act of suppression or repression to have made a conscious choice. I'm not going to lay my hand on the stove anymore. And so now, when whatever the alignment of the stars, the chemistry of my brain, something I saw on TV reactivates just that habitual conditioned part of my brain that might go, hey, go put your hand on that stove again. I have cultivated the willpower to say, we've had this conversation, motherfucker. I'm not putting my hand on the stove. Does that help?
Yeah, I get that. I hear it, and I think it's maybe it's in some sense unique to each whatever that this thing is for different people. Like to not necessarily judge it as good or bad, but well, you have it depends on the thing, right? And there can be destructive aspects of these things that are not putting you on the path you want to be on, where but like to not judge the whole thing as a bad thing, and to
Oh,
find
totally.
the part of it that resonates and moves you to where you want to be.
I'm one unique guy living one unique life with one very specific karmic dharmic imprint that I'm here to live. At this moment in my life, it is not within my dharmic path to be in relationship with or in sexual relationship with a disabled person. It is also not in my karmic dharmic path to disable myself. So these are things I'm choosing to step away from. There are people that have this same, and I'm going to say it for dramatic effect, I don't think it is this, that have this affliction, that have walked this same path I have, or rolled as the case might have been, that have found themselves in relationships with disabled men, that have taken their unique attraction for the disabled, and it has carried them to a disabled person that needs someone to love them, that needs
Mm,
someone to think it's sexy when they have to do these things that are actually kind of miserable. One of my great revelations in this whole journey was I was living life thinking that being paralyzed just meant you couldn't move your legs. And as long as you were strong enough to drag them along with you, no dice. Like, what's the problem? These are hard lives. There's a lot of physical pain. There's a lot of body dysfunction that's deeper below the surface that folks don't realize. But the amount of care that goes into caring for and living in a paralyzed body in particular is no small thing. That the universe has assigned a couple thousand people like me to think that's the coolest thing ever, it's the same magic that puts people that aren't afraid of dying here to do death work. It's a beautiful thing. So please, and I think we've made it clear, but just to put a button on it, there is nothing wrong with following these urges to find proximity to the disabled if that is going to create good for you and good for them. I have to candidly admit, I spent 10 years acting like a predator because of this. I have engaged in behaviors that I am not proud of because of this. And so you have to you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and call this whole category of fetishistic attraction bad. It can lead to beautiful things. It's all what you choose to do with it. If I were to act upon it right now, it would blow up my life. I'm in a monogamous relationship. I have made this commitment. I have seen and have proven data from decades of experience. When I step onto this path, it is a path that always takes me down. So I'm going to make the choice to not make that step anymore.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it is finding how it actually is playing out and like making these conscious choices as opposed to letting it take you to places you don't want to be. But also following it when necessary, and sometimes it is. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode with Clark Neselrodt. There's more with Clark next week. We continued talking about his book a little more. We also talked about our respective coaching practices, how they overlap, how they're a little different. And we also talked a little about politics and the state of the world and how to get through it and how to look at it from a more spiritual point of view. So stay tuned next week, and some more fun episodes coming up after that on this season of Two Bi Guys. Check the link in my bio anytime now through June for the discussion series I'm going to be hosting. It's free to join, meet other bi people, talk about a topic, and that's all. Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Bi Guys. Bye. Two Bi Guys by One Bi Guy is produced and edited by me, Robert Brooks Cohen, and it was created by me and Alex Boyd. Our new logo art is by Caitlin Weinman. Our music is by Ross Mincer. To help support this podcast, visit patreon.com/Robert Brooks Cohen. You'll get full video episodes, early access, and bonus content. Visit robertbrookscohen.com to learn more about my coaching, my book, and my stand-up comedy. And thanks for listening to Two Bi Guys by One Bi Guy.